Welcome back to Focal Point AAFR Talk. Great to have you in the conversation. One quick thing I've got to do, something I forgot to do to open my program. I've got to open the websites I need to have open in front of me during the program. Great to have you in the conversation today. And we want to talk about a number of things today. I want to begin. This is sort of not something I'm going to follow up today, but it's a piece I came across actually before Christmas by Doug Bandow, who's a very perceptive guy and a good writer. And he's talking about this whole issue of secession and just the principle of it. As you're aware, there are a number of petitions on the White House website to request President Obama to graciously allow states that want to secede, to let them pull out. And so there's been a number of discussion. It was quite a bit of discussion about it at the time. And I pulled this column by Doug Bandow called The Great Secession. And I just want to read several excerpts from this column. And I want to be careful. Look, I'm just reporting what Doug Bandow is saying. I'm not saying I'm 100% on board with this, so please don't misunderstand me. I'm just passing this along for your consideration because I think this is a topic that bears discussion and thought. Here is what Bandow says. Behind all the silliness surrounding the discussion of secession, behind all the seriousness or silliness is a serious issue. Why shouldn't people be able to reorder their political arrangements if they wish? Must whatever has been put together be forever kept together? And I think that's a great question. This is on the American Spectator, by the way, which is one of the highly respected websites, conservative websites. Bob Terrell has been a guest on this program before, heads up this website. He says this: there's no inherent reason why any particular group of people should be in community with any other. Slavery will always stain the cause of the Southern Confederacy, but what principle justified slaughtering thousands to hold the country together? Unionist Horace Greeley declared in the New York Tribune, "We hope never to live in a republic whereof one section is pinned to the residue by bayonets." Then Colonel Robert E. Lee opposed secession, but explained, quote, "A union that can only be maintained by swords and bayonets, and in which strife and civil war are to take the place of brotherly love and kindness, has no charm for me." Now, Bandow says instead of arguing about succession, it would be better to revive federalism. Now, what he means by federalism, a lot of people don't know what this term means. It actually means the opposite of what most people think it means. Federalism means that we restore the power to the states that the founders envisioned. The founders envisioned the federal government, the central government, to be very small in power and reach, very carefully prescribed, very limited in government or in reach, with actually very little power. The bulk of the power to regulate public policy was going to rest with the states. That was the design of the founders. Now we've got to the place where it's upside down, and the bulk of the power and the money now flow to Washington, D.C. And he quotes a writer by the name of Reynolds to this effect. Reynolds wrote, "Let the central government do the things that only central governments can do: national defense, regulation of trade to keep the provinces from engaging in economic warfare from one another, protection of basic civil rights, and then let the provinces go their own way in most other issues." This is exactly what the founders intended. If you're not happy, you don't have to secede, just move to another state. In fact, we're seeing that happen in droves. I'll take a break here from that story. I came across a story here on Business Insider. No, that's not the one I'm looking for. Let me grab it here. It's from United Van Lines, because United Van Lines, remember, they move people every day from one state in the union to the other. And they're reporting now They produce an annual study about out-migration, in-migration, where are people moving to, where are they moving from. The top 10 states that Americans are fleeing from continue to be those states who do not have right-to-work laws, laws that have forced unionism. And that's such a drag on the economy that people are moving from these blue states, typically run by liberals and by Democrats, and they are fleeing them in droves. So that's what Bandow was talking about. If you leave maximum control, all of the control in the hands of the state governments that they were designed to have by the Constitution, then people can decide where in the United States they want to live. Now, for instance, we're going to have Reverend Doug Lane on in the second hour. He's a pastor in the state of Mississippi. Mississippi is on the cusp of becoming the first state in the union to have no abortion clinic at all. It'll be the first abortion clinic-free state in the United States. So if people want to have abortions, they live in Mississippi, they're going to have to go to Memphis, or they're going to have to go to Nashville or someplace out of state to get an abortion. They won't be able to find a legal abortion in the state of Mississippi. So if that happens, people say, look, I want to live in an abortion-free state. I'm pro-life. That's what I want. That's a value I want to be a part of. I'm going to move to a state that protects the sanctity of life, and people are free to do it. And that's what Bandow is saying. So that's what we ought to do. The alternative is secession. The alternative to secession is a revival of federalism. And this is what Bandow says. This has the advantage of fulfilling the original constitutional scheme. The national government was supposed to have only limited and enumerated powers. In contrast, according to James Madison in Federalist Number 45, states were to be concerned with the lives, liberties, and properties of the people and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state, by which he meant the individual states. So James Madison said, look, the powers given to the central government are limited and definite. The powers that are given to the states are innumerable and indefinite. In other words, if the Constitution did not grant authority to the central government to deal with an issue, it had no authority whatsoever. That authority remained with the state governments. That's why their authority was intended by the founders to be virtually limitless. He says this secession isn't likely to prove a practical answer. Instead of breaking up the United States of America, people should focus on devolving authority to states, localities, families, and individuals. Rediscovering federalism is what should become the new mantra in Washington, D.C. So that is a good piece, Doug Bandow. Now, another issue, and we've talked about this before. In fact, the sermon I preached a week or so ago on this, my home church, had to do with the fact that we recognize our country's going in the wrong direction. And then the question is, should Christians just pull out altogether? Oh, by the way, before I jump into that, I got a story here from The Blaze indicating that a story is circulating on the web that the rapper Eminem may have become a born-again Christian. This was cited on the website allhiphop.com, the Christian Post. Huffington Post has also reported on the alleged faith transformation. Again, we don't know if there's any truth to it or not. Right now, it is just a rumor that's out there several different places on the web. The Blaze finally was able to contact a publicist at his record company and ask the publicist, is the singer now a born-again Christian? He is not. So that's the publicist for Eminem, so we'll continue to keep an eye on that. But the question that this writer asks, this is James Wiles, an American thinker, is cocooning the wrong solution for conservatives. In other words, what we tend to want to do as Christians at this time in our nation's history, when things are going so bad, they're going so south, we've seen the kind of leadership that's been returned to power in the United States, and we think, well, there's nothing left for me but to hunker down, find a little rabbit hutch, burrow in there with my little brood, batten down the hatches, pull the cover in, and just try to ride out the storm and just survive and focus on my little world. And James Wiles said, look, it's impossible. You can't do it even if you wanted to. It'd be nice. It's nice in theory, and you can understand the temptation. You can understand the desire to do it. But he says this, it is no longer possible to flee into the wilderness beyond the reach and the ken or the knowledge of government. I just finished reading a biography of Roger Williams, who was actually the father of the concept of the separation of church and state, by which he meant the state had to keep its nose completely out of the church, which is exactly what Thomas Jefferson meant by a wall of separation. The state can't barge into a church or a church-run institution like a Catholic hospital, like a Catholic university, like a Christian school, like a business that's run by people of faith, and tell it what to do. It's flatly prohibited from doing that. That's Roger Williams. Well, he got thrown out of Massachusetts. So what did he do? He went to the wilderness. He went and formed Rhode Island. He was not allowed for 20 years to set foot in the colony of Massachusetts. So he just went to the wilderness and established the community of Providence and what became the state of Rhode Island. And what this guy says, look, you can't do it anymore. There is no wilderness to which we can flee, which is beyond the reach of government. He goes on, it's also quite clear that the Obama administration has no intention of leaving us alone with our guns, our religion, and our patriotism. And he says, look, we don't have the option of Joshua. You know, they could leave Egypt and they could go to Canaan. They could go in and take over the land. We don't have that option. There is no Canaan to go to. As Tim Wildman, president of AFA, often says, there's no place left to sail to. If this place goes down, there's no place to flee to. Where are you going to go? Soviet Union? Going to go to Europe? Going to go to South America, some banana republic? Where will you go? There is no place to go. For American patriots, this is the promised land. So his point is this is the last best hope of mankind on earth, as Ronald Reagan said, and we've got to fight for it. It's worth fighting for. It's worth defending. And part of it's just the practical reality is there's no realistic alternative. You know, what he's saying, look, you can try to hunker down inside your own little village, in your own little house, in your own tiny little family. That's not going to stop the Barack Obama administration from barging into your house and taking your guns, taking your religious liberty, sticking his hand into your pocket to fund welfare programs. There's nowhere to go. In other words, we've got to take a stand here and we've got to defend what is left of the United States and seek to rebuild it. You know, the point I made in my sermon is God has a calling on nations, and I believe the calling on the United States is to fulfill the Great Commission to make disciples of all nations. That's a vision, a dream that's worth fighting for. Back in 2.